At my husband's funeral, my son, a young, wealthy businessman who's always in a rush, walked up to me with eyes gentle, yet distant. He squeezed my hand and said proudly, "Mom, I just want to make sure you're comfortable in the mansion I bought for you." I froze. My heart sank. What mansion? For the past 2 years, I've still been in the old 4B apartment, the one with peeling floors, a leaky roof whenever it rains, and I've been living on my husband's modest pension. My daughter-in-law stepped closer, a fitted black silk dress, expensive perfume overpowering the floral scent of the service. She smiled slightly, lips red as blood, but her eyes were cold and haughty. I knew that look, the look of someone who has taken what isn't theirs. And when I looked straight at her and calmly asked, "What mansion are you talking about, son?" Her smile stalled, frozen in a room suddenly filled with suspicious glances. She didn't know that just a few weeks later, that mansion would become the place where her reputation, her marriage, and the flashy life she built on lies would be buried. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Brenda Cole, 67 years old, widow of a man I loved for almost my entire life, Michael. We lived simply in a small apartment in Davie, Florida, where the hallway always smelled like morning coffee and you could hear kids playing. I wasn't wealthy, but I used to think I was happy because I had a steady family and a successful son people admired. But sometimes what hurts most isn't poverty, it's realizing you've been forgotten inside your own family. And that funeral where I should have only said goodbye to my husband became the day I realized the daughter-in-law I'd tried to love was the one who had taken everything. That morning, weak sunlight came through the funeral home's glass windows in Coral Springs, tinting the white ribbons on the wreaths gold. I sat in the front row, clutching an old handkerchief, the last gift Michael gave me before he passed. We had been together more than 40 years, sharing every pension check, every morning coffee, every sleepless night over medical bills. Michael was calm and steady, but always gentle in the smallest gestures. The day he left, I thought the hardest part of my life was over. Turns out, his funeral was the beginning of the deepest pain I've ever known. Andrew, our only son, stood near the main doors. A black suit hugged his shoulders, an expensive watch catching the light. At 35, he already owned a successful tech company in Miami, praised in the news as a self-made example of the new generation. I used to cry proud tears whenever I saw him on TV. But the more successful he became, the less he was home. Calls got shorter, visits got briefer, replaced by quick notes. "Mom, Serena will swing by to drop you some money for groceries." Serena, Andrew's wife, is the kind of woman who makes people look twice. Golden hair, a perfect smile, and a way of walking like the world should step aside. I tried to love her, the way American mothers-in-law do, look for common ground, compliment the pie she brought, try to believe she truly loved my son. But there are things an older woman can sense without proof. The look of disdain when she saw me use an old wallet. The way she said, "Mom," without ever really meeting my eyes. And now, in Michael's funeral, she stood by my son as if she were the one who had lost the most. She placed a hand on Andrew's shoulder, whispered something, and then, right in that moment, Andrew said the sentence that made the crowded room go silent. "Mom, I just want to make sure you're comfortable in the mansion I bought for you." I thought I misheard. A few seconds stretched as long as a lifetime. Then I answered, voice shaking, "What did you say, Andrew?" I've never lived in any mansion." Andrew frowned, confused. "What do you mean, Mom?" "The house in Coral Gables, the one I bought 2 years ago. I remember you said you loved the backyard." My chest tightened. Coral Gables? I've never set foot there. For the last 2 years, I've still been in 4B, the old place in Davie where every morning I catch leaks with a plastic bucket. Serena cut in immediately, voice sweet but sharp as a blade. Mom must be confused. She's been forgetful lately, we've been worried. That line rang out clear, like she wanted everyone to hear it. I glanced around, some relatives looked at me, a few nodding with pity. I bit my lip and kept steady. I'm not confused, Serena, I said quietly. I remember every crack in my wall, every hiss in my pipes. If I truly lived in a mansion, I wouldn't be carrying a bucket every night to catch drips. The room went silent. Andrew looked at his wife, then back at me. Serena tightened her grip on her purse and forced a smile. Of course, Mom is just joking. But her eyes said otherwise, darting, startled then, narrowing into a quick, warning glance as if telling Andrew to keep quiet. I'm old, not blind. I know the look of someone hiding a secret, and Serena had just given it away. After the service, when most people had left, Andrew came over, still looking rattled. Mom, he said softly, maybe I should swing by the apartment soon. I thought you'd already moved. No, I'm still there, Andrew. I never left, and I never received any key except the key to 4B. I watched his face tighten. Something was cracking inside the son I've loved all my life. Behind him, Serena stepped up, voice smooth as velvet. Honey, it's your dad's funeral. Can we talk about this later? Mom's just emotional. I turned to her. Serena, I said, calm but firm. I've lived long enough to know when someone's lying. She pressed her lips together, eyes skittering away. Andrew squeezed my shoulder and murmured, Mom, let's get some air. But I didn't want to leave. I wanted this ended now. No, Andrew, I said. If you really bought me a mansion, I want to know why I've never lived there. Serena stepped back, a practiced smile returning. Mom, you're drawing attention. This is your husband's funeral. Exactly, I said slowly. That's why I don't want anything else to be hidden today. Aunt Lillian, Michael's younger sister, happened to walk by and heard it. She stopped, looked at us, then said gently, I just visited Brenda's apartment last week. She still lives there. I even brought her an apple pie. The air froze. Andrew turned fully to his wife, doubt now visible. Serena stood rigid, hands trembling just enough to make her pearl necklace quiver. I took a breath and kept my voice even. Son, I think it's time we talk in private, just the three of us. Andrew nodded and asked a funeral home staffer to open a small back room for family. When the door closed, I looked straight at Serena without blinking. Andrew pulled out his phone. Let me check the closing file. Maybe there's a mix-up somewhere. There's no mix-up, I said, low but steady. Someone has been living in that house. And I believe that person is standing right here. Serena let out a small, brittle laugh, the kind that sounds like breaking glass. Are you accusing me? I know you're hurting, I get it, but I'm not hurting. I cut in. I'm recalling every electric bill, every bank letter, every tax notice that all came to 4B. No one mixed anything up, Serena. Andrew exhaled, scrolling. Mom, here it is. The confirmation for the Coral Gables purchase, signed 2 years ago, recipient Brenda Cole. He paused. Mom, there's your electronic signature. I stared at the screen. That signature wasn't mine. The strokes were straight, stiff, missing the soft loop of my right hand. That isn't my signature, I said quietly. Andrew froze. Serena went pale as if the blood drained from her face. No one spoke for a few seconds. Only the hum of the vent and my heartbeat thudding in my chest. Finally, Andrew whispered, Mom, we need to review everything, including the bank records. Serena turned away, clutching her purse. This isn't the time, she muttered. But Andrew looked right at her, his voice no longer gentle. No, Serena, this is exactly the time. I knew, In that moment, things had started to break. And I also knew that although today was my husband's funeral, another funeral for the lies was being prepared right there in that small room. Andrew sat on the wooden chair by the small table in the family room. The soft yellow light showed the dark circles under his eyes, proof of many sleepless nights. The room smelled of polished wood and funeral flowers, making the air heavier. I stayed standing, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. "Let me show you," Andrew said, pulling out his phone. "Maybe you really forgot. I have photos." I looked at the bright screen. A woman stood in a large kitchen. Sunny light. A stainless steel fridge. A spotless white stone island. She wore a beige sweater and gave a slight smile toward the camera. From a distance, at a glance, she did look like me. Same short gray-streaked hair, a slim frame, hands laced in front. But the longer I looked, the colder I felt. I tilted my head and drew a breath. "Andrew," I said slowly, "that woman is not me." He frowned. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "She looks exactly like you." I pointed to the screen. "Do you see the small scar on my right wrist? I got it slicing apples in 1998. She doesn't have it. And here, I touched my own cheek. I have a tiny freckle on my left cheek. She doesn't." Andrew went still. He zoomed in, eyes scanning the details I named. His face shifted from surprise to confusion. He swiped to the next photo. "This one," he murmured, "in the find yard. Mom, that's the garden you said you loved." I followed his gaze. The woman stood by a blooming rose bush holding a watering can. Behind her, tall palms and a pale stone wall. I had never seen that place. "Son," I said, "I've never stood in any garden like that. I don't know that wall. I don't know those roses." He swallowed. He slid through more images. On a sofa in the living room, opening the garage holding a bouquet. Every shot was the same woman and none were me. The screen's light washed his face paler and paler. Across from us, Serena folded her arms and tried a thin smile. "Honey," she said, high and soft, "I think Mom's mistaken. It's a painful day, her memory might be jumbled." I looked straight at her. "Serena, I am still clear enough to tell the difference between a dream kitchen and my real one, the one with a refrigerator that roars every night and a light bulb that's been flickering since last year." The room seemed to refrigerator. Lock in place. Andrew's eyes flashed, for the first time, with doubt. "Serena," he said slowly, "who is the woman in these photos?" She jolted, lips parting without sound. Then, a thin, forced smile. "Not now. This is your father's funeral." No, Serena." Andrew's voice was low and sharp. "Who is she?" I saw her throat twitch. The hallway outside had started to murmur. Some relatives must have heard a bit. The whispers slipped under the door like small waves. Serena tried to steady herself, her voice trembling. I don't think this is the right time. People are watching." I glanced at Andrew. "Son, if you really want the truth, there's no better time than now." He drew a breath and nodded. "You're right. We clear this up here." I sat, keeping my voice unusually calm. "Andrew, if you truly bought that mansion for me, check the basics, the name on the deed, the utility bills, and the door codes. I've never had any door code except opposite. The one for 4B? Remember? And every utility bill has gone to the same address for 15 years. Andrew turned to his wife. "Do you have the documents, Serena?" She gripped her purse and shook her head. "That's the broker's side. I don't keep them. But I'm sure everything's legit. Mom must be mistaken, really." I exhaled and set my hand on the table, voice steady but firm. "If there's a mistake, it certainly isn't mine. I know every pension dollar, every one of your father's medical costs, every bill I've struggled to pay." Andrew stared at his phone, breathing faster. I remember asking Serena to handle the move for Mom, he said quietly. You told me she'd already moved to Coral Gables and sent me photos. These photos. Serena rushed in. You said Mom asked me to e-sign for her. Remember? My head snapped up. E-sign? I have never signed anything I didn't read, and I don't recall asking anyone to sign for me, especially for a house you said was for me. Serena's face went chalk white. She edged back, scarlet lips trembling. You're misunderstanding. I only wanted to make things quick, you know. Andrew lifted his head. His eyes were different now, no softness, no trust, only the cool clarity of someone who has just realized he's been deceived. Serena, he said, each word dropping like a blade, tell the truth. You're living in that mansion, aren't you? The air turned to lead. I could hear the wall clock tick. Serena stood rigid, swallowing hard. Then, in a thin, cracked voice, she said, Yes, I'm living there. It felt like a punch to the chest. For a moment, all sound vanished. I only saw her lips move and my son's face drain. Andrew dropped into the chair, fists clenched around his phone. God, he exhaled. What did you just say? She stammered. I thought the house was too big for Mom. So I stayed there for a while she remained at the old apartment. I tilted my head, oddly calm. For a while, for 2 years, Serena? She stiffened. You're misunderstanding. Enough. Andrew's voice filled the small room. You've lied to me for 2 years? Serena stepped back, tears welling, but neither of us believed them. I sat still, hands in my lap, the cold spreading from my chest to my fingers. Something in me, something once soft, was cracking, not from despair, but from awakening. I looked straight at her and said, quiet and clear, Do you understand what you just admitted? You lived in the house my son bought for me, while I caught leaks and ate canned soup every night. She wiped at her eyes and forced a smile. Please don't make this bigger than it is. I just wanted everyone to be happy. Andrew's voice broke. What happiness is built on lies, Serena? Out in the hall, the murmurs swelled. I heard someone whisper, What's going on? And footsteps stop outside the door. I turned to my son. Andrew, I said softly, we can't let this slide. Check everything the house records, the transactions, and who actually holds the title. The truth doesn't fear the light. He nodded slowly. His eyes went back to his wife, now only tired and disappointed. Serena bowed her head, voice shrinking. I don't want to discuss this here, please, but I knew every plea was just a way to delay the unavoidable. Because the moment she admitted living in that mansion, the wall propping up their marriage cracked, and I knew it would all collapse soon. Serena stood silent for a few seconds after blurting out her confession. She seemed to realize she'd said too much. She straightened, smoothed her golden hair, and changed tone, trying to regain poise. I just thought, the house was too big for an older person, Mom. You're used to a small apartment. That mansion has too many stairs and it's far from the center. I worried you wouldn't adjust, so I cut in, not loud, but each word heavy enough to thicken the air. So you lived there in my place for 2 years? Serena pressed her lips together, eyes sliding away. I just stayed temporarily, to keep an eye on the house for you. Who knew it would be misunderstood like this? Andrew nearly lost control. He shot up, sharp in a way I'd rarely seen. Keep an eye on it? Serena, that's the house I bought for my mother. So she could feel secure in her later years, not stuck alone in that old, cramped apartment. Her heel clicked against the floor with a hard, dry sound as she stepped back. She wore a thin, paper-like smile. I know, but you said Mom likes her privacy. I was only doing what she wanted. My voice dropped. Privacy? Do you think privacy means isolation, lies, and having your home taken from you? Serena inhaled, trying to stay composed. Please don't misunderstand. I was afraid the move would be too tiring, so I told Andrew you didn't want to leave the old place. I remember you said you like your neighbors there, right? Andrew whipped toward her. Hold on. You told me Mom didn't like being visited, that she wanted to be alone, needed privacy. You said Mom asked not to be bothered because she was tired. I believed that for 2 years. The word believed caught in his throat. I could feel the hurt of a son robbed of the most sacred bond there is. I placed a hand on my chest to steady my breath. Suddenly everything clicked, like a puzzle I'd only seen in pieces. The calls Andrew said he was too busy to make, the Thanksgivings I waited alone, the postcards I sent that never got a reply. Turns out my son wasn't indifferent. Someone had built a wall between us made of sweet words, fake emails, and Mom said she doesn't want to see you. Andrew's voice was low but firm. You lied to me, didn't you? About everything? Serena bit her lip, face, still trying for coolness, but her eyes wavered. I don't think of it as lying. I just wanted things to run smoothly. I watched the conflict rise in her. Then, in the tension, she let out a line that chilled me. Because I could. Because no one questioned it. The room went dead quiet. Andrew stared, stunned. I felt the world stop. That one line, casual and arrogant, exposed who she really was. A woman who believed the greatest power is other people's indifference. Andrew shook his head, voice cracking. Do you realize what you've done? You stole 2 years of my life with my mother, years we can't get back. Serena tried to defend herself, eyes glassy. I didn't mean it. I just thought Mom would be happier not being bothered. You were busy, and I didn't want her to feel hurt that you had no time. I was trying to be kind. I let out a small laugh with no joy. Kind to who, Serena? To me or to yourself? She looked down and said nothing. Tears fell perfectly timed for sympathy. But I'm too old to be fooled by late tears. Andrew drew a breath and turned away. Pack your things and leave that mansion. As soon as the funeral is over, I don't want another excuse. Serena's eyes flew wide. She stepped closer, voice breaking. You can't say that. This is your father's funeral. People are outside. Don't make a scene. No, Serena. My voice was even and final. Precisely because this is my husband's funeral, I won't allow another lie in this place. She turned to me, trying to look fragile. Mom, please. Don't let Andrew lose face in front of the family. I stood, straightening my back, and spoke slowly. Today, the person losing face isn't Andrew. It's you because you chose deceit. Andrew sat, rubbing his temples. I saw both anger and shame in him. I was so foolish, he muttered. All this time I thought Mom didn't need me. I beat myself up for not being there. And it was you who orchestrated it. Serena sank into a chair, tears spilling. Don't say that. I was trying to keep the peace. Mom and we've never gotten along. I was afraid she'd wear you out. My voice softened but stayed cool. You know who was worn out? Not Andrew, me. Worn out from believing my son had forgotten me. Worn out from thinking I no longer mattered to anyone. Silence stretched. I could hear rain begin to tap against the small window. I turned to Andrew and said gently, Son, it's time you check everything, the bank records, the mail, the messages you thought were from me. You may find more than you expect. He nodded, his eyes more resolute than ever. I will. I want to know how much of my life over the past 2 years was real. Serena reached for Andrew's hand, pleading, Honey, don't do this to me. We can talk later. Mom is too emotional, and so are you. I don't want us to say things that tear the whole family apart. Andrew pulled his hand back. Tear apart? You think it isn't already? You took my mother's trust and the bond in this family. What more do you want? I sat down, quietly watching, not interrupting. I knew any defense Serena made now would only expose her further. She wiped her tears and spoke softly. Honey, I just didn't think Mom would react so harshly. If she could accept that I only meant well, maybe. Andrew cut in. Enough. My mother doesn't need you to decide what's good for her. Serena stood, inhaled, and put her cold mask back on. If you want to investigate, then investigate. I have nothing to hide. She said that, but I clearly saw her hands tremble. I turned to Andrew, my voice low but steady. Son, don't let this be forgotten. I don't want it to end with a fake apology. See it through, and let the truth speak for itself. He nodded, and placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that felt both like an apology and a promise. I turned to Serena with a slight smile. Serena, you can cry, you can play the misunderstood wife, but remember, tears don't wash away guilt when someone cries only to keep a mask on. Serena looked at me, anger flashing in her eyes, no longer contained. As for me, in that moment, I felt an odd calm. Maybe because I finally understood, this wasn't a family misunderstanding anymore. This was a fight to reclaim the truth. And this time, I would not step back. 3 days after the funeral, a light Florida rain fell. It was soft but persistent, as if it wanted to keep me in that old 4B apartment a little longer. I was making coffee when I heard a knock. When I opened the door, Andrew stood there soaked, holding a worn brown box. His face was tired, his beard unshaven, and his eyes red, but not from the rain. I brought this for you, he said hoarsely. It's what I found in the office at the mansion. I invited him in. We sat at the small dining table by the window, the spot where Michael used to read the paper every morning. The little room felt warm but empty. The dim light outside only managed to brush the faded wedding photo on the wall. Andrew set the box on the floor and opened it. Inside were a stack of envelopes, some files, and a black leather notebook. He bent down and pulled out the first envelope. I think you should see this first. I took it, a birthday card with a cream cover and a pink ribbon. The handwriting on the envelope was mine, from at least 3 years ago. To my beloved son, Mom. I opened it. Inside was a card that had never been unsealed, the flap still glued tight. My God, I whispered. You never received these cards, did you? Andrew shook his head, eyes down. Not a single one. There are cards from earlier years, too. I looked at the other envelopes in the box. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, all in my handwriting, sent to Andrew's friend. Office address. All unopened. I placed my hand on one of the cards, feeling like I was touching a stolen piece of memory. Each one represented a year I sat alone in this apartment, writing to my son with love, waiting for a phone call that never came. I thought you were mad at me, Andrew said quietly. Serena told me you didn't want contact. She even showed me emails you sent asking me not to bother you. I looked up. Emails? I don't even know how to send emails. I only write by hand. He nodded. I know, and I printed all of them. He pulled out another stack, printed emails showing my name as the sender. The tone read like someone distant. Andrew, I need time alone. Don't call me too much. I feel tired. My hands shook holding the page. No, Andrew, I never wrote these lines. He clenched his fists, the veins rising in his neck. I know. Now I know. But before, I believed it. Serena said you'd changed, forgetful, moody, for no reason. She said you needed space. It felt like someone had just drained the air from my lungs. It turns out every silence over the years had been arranged by someone else. I reached for the last item in the box, the black leather notebook. It was thick, heavy, and smelled like old leather. Andrew said softly, "I found it in Serena's desk drawer. Looks like a personal journal." I opened the first page. The neat, sharp handwriting was Serena's. The first line read, "Plan to maintain balance between both sides, Brenda and Andrew." I swallowed. Andrew sat beside me in silence. I turned a few more pages. Each page was meticulous, like an operator's logbook, not a wife's diary. "Call Brenda. Tell her Andrew is busy and won't stop by. Tell Andrew. Mom said don't call. She's tired. May 12th, Brenda sent a card. Keep it. Don't forward. We'll say it got lost." I shuddered. Each line was a small cut, executed with chilling precision. Andrew stared at the notebook, his lips tight. "Turn to the middle," he said. I opened to a page with a small paper clip. At the top, written in red ink, "Mother's Day." Below was a detailed note, "Morning. Send flowers to 4B from Andrew, keep the message short. Call Mom, say he's in a meeting and can't talk. Evening. Cook dinner at home. Tell him Mom said thanks and doesn't want to be bothered. Goal. Make Brenda feel remembered but without needing to meet." I set the notebook down. My vision blurred not from age, but from tears rising too fast. I remembered last Mother's Day, the bouquet of roses I received, the machine-printed card with Andrew's signature, and Serena's call saying he was on a business trip. I believed it. I sat alone all evening, watching the bouquet wither, yet felt warm, thinking my son was busy but still loved me, so even that love had been staged. Andrew was silent for a long time, then picked the notebook up again and flipped quickly. His hand trembled. "Mom," he said softly, "it's all here. Notes about the transfers, a whole plan to manage communication between you and me." I closed my eyes. A cold current ran down my spine. "You know," I said, my voice low, "all this time, I kept thinking it was my fault, that I was too sensitive, expected too much, too selfish to feel abandoned. But in truth, I was just a victim of scripted words." Andrew squeezed my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was blind." I shook my head. "No, Andrew, it isn't your fault. Serena knew how to make you believe. You're a good man, and that's exactly what made you easy to use." The room sank into silence. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming on the metal awning. I looked through the streaked window and felt both pain and a strange relief, because at last I knew the truth. No more what-ifs, no more doubting myself. Only the bare truth and a wound beginning to heal the only way it can, by facing it. Andrew pulled a few last sheets from the box. "Look at this." They were a series of utility bills in my name addressed to Coral Gables. "She used my name to register utilities," I said, voice trembling. "So when you checked, everything matched." "Right. Everything was legal to perfection." Andrew let out a bitter laugh. "She's smart, Mom. Too smart." I looked at the black notebook one last time. Between the slanted lines of ink, I saw 3 faint pencil lines almost erased. "Don't let them be together too long. Things break when they start telling the truth." To me, that was the final proof. Serena hadn't lied only out of greed. She lied to control, to turn me into a faded memory in my son's life, so she could take my place completely. I set the notebook down and spoke slowly. "Andrew, this isn't a small mistake. This is systematic manipulation. Not an accident, not a misunderstanding." He nodded, his eyes colder than before. "I won't let this be buried. I want to know what she did with the money, with the property, and with you." I gripped his hand, feeling the warmth of that trembling palm. "If you want to start with the money trail. That's where every lie leaves a mark." Andrew looked at me, a faint, sad but determined smile. "I understand. This time, you won't be alone." I nodded. Outside, the rain still fell, but the thick fog inside me after so many years finally lifted. I knew that from here, the fight to reclaim justice for my family was truly beginning. The next morning, I had just poured coffee when Andrew knocked. He looked like he hadn't slept much. The dark circles under his eyes were stark. He carried a thin folder, neatly arranged as if he'd spent the whole night sorting it. "Mom," he said, voice low, "I need you to see this." He set the folder on the table. Inside were a series of bank statements, lines of text, and steady amounts, $2,000 each month, for 3 years. "This is the money I sent you," Andrew said. "Every month, transferred through Serena's account. She said you didn't want to receive it directly, so I let her handle it." I looked at him, then at the numbers in front of me. Hundreds, then thousands, steady, month after month. In total, $36,000. A chill ran down my spine. I said softly, word by word, "I never received a single dollar of this." Andrew looked up, his face hardening. "That's impossible. She said you used it for Dad's medication and monthly expenses." I gave a small laugh that hurt all the way through. "Dad's medication? I had to sell my wedding ring to pay for it, Andrew, and your father's gold watch. If I had the money, would I have let him go 3 weeks without his meds? People say, you can lose money and earn it back, but trust once lost never returns the same." After hearing all this, I asked myself what hurts more, losing money or losing faith in someone you once considered family? What about you? What part of this story hurts you the most? Write me a few lines so we can reflect together on how to keep our dignity and kindness in a world full of lies. He fell silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking, one beat at a time. "Was Serena the middle person?" I asked, my voice tight. "She received the money for me, then told you I was fine, didn't she?" Andrew nodded without speaking. I took a deep breath and looked down at the papers. Those cold black lines now felt like cuts on the skin, steady, silent, stretching over 3 years without my knowledge. "Count them," I said quietly. 3 years, 36 months, 36 times she took the money without blinking. Andrew picked up a pen and counted each column. Every stroke was a stab to his heart. At the final number, his hand trembled. 36,000, he whispered, then let out a long, exhausted breath. She skimmed it all. I didn't answer. I just sat still, looking at the window where the rain had just stopped, weak light spilling in and reflecting on the table. I thought of the nights Michael coughed until he choked, how I propped his head on a worn pillow and counted the pills left in the bottle. I thought of dinners where I ate a single slice of dry bread, telling myself I wasn't hungry, just to save money for him. And somewhere else, Serena was living in a mansion, dining by candlelight in a silk dress, calling it a life she deserved. Andrew raked his hair, voice breaking. "Mom, I swear I didn't know. I was so foolish. She even told me not to send more because you said that amount was enough. Mom, I believed her." I put a hand on my son's shoulder. "Andrew, I know you had no ill intent, but now we have to be clear-headed. She didn't just take money. She took my time as a mother, and she stole your trust." He looked at me, eyes wet, but determined. "Mom, I'll get everything back. The money and our honor." I nodded gently. "No, Andrew, we'll clarify everything. Not for revenge, but for justice." He opened his laptop and kept checking. "Mom, here besides the $2,000 each month, there were small transfers, medical expenses, housekeeping services, all confirmed by Serena. She even used an email under your name to send payment confirmations." I closed my eyes briefly. "So she staged everything so perfectly that you had no reason to doubt." "Right," Andrew said, his voice dry. "She knows how to make everything look reasonable." I leaned back. a wave of fatigue washing over me. But this time, that fatigue wasn't helplessness. It was the storm front of a battle I was ready to face. "Andrew," I said more calmly, "we'll go to the mansion. As soon as possible. She built a whole world of lies, and it's time to face it." He looked up, a spark of resolve in his eyes. "I thought the same last night. I've contacted a lawyer. We know he'll advise us on the legal framework. If needed, we can go to the police or file a civil case." I nodded. "Good. But before we confront her, we prepare. No arguing, no letting her steer the conversation. Just ask the right questions, take the right facts." I pulled out a blank sheet and wrote the first lines. List to verify. 1. Bank statements for the last 3 years. 2. Mail, emails, texts, cross-check each contact as 3. Utility bills registered in my name at the Coral Gables mansion. 4. Door codes and property insurance. I paused and looked up at Andrew. "You handle the banking first. I'll call Aunt Lillian. She can confirm a few details. We need evidence, not emotions." Andrew nodded. "I understand. But Mom," his voice caught, "how can you bear knowing all of this?" I looked out the window. Sun after rain began to glint, gold reflecting off the foggy glass. "I've endured 3 years of loneliness, Andrew. Now, knowing the truth doesn't weaken me, it makes me clearer." He was silent, as if carving my words into himself. "Tomorrow," I continued, "we go to the mansion. No notice. I want to look her in the eye when I say the first sentence." Andrew looked up. "What's the first sentence, Mom?" I smiled faintly, though my heart was still scraped raw. "It's, 'Serena, do you know every dollar you took was paid for with someone else's pain?'" He nodded and held my hand. "Mom, I promise I won't leave you alone again. I owe you that." I looked at my son, and for the first time in years, I saw not only love in his eyes but awakening the one thing every mother hopes for in her child, no matter the cost it takes to get there. That afternoon, after Andrew left, I sat alone, opened the small notebook on the table, and wrote on a fresh page. "No one can lie forever. One day the truth will find its way to speak." I set down the pen and closed the notebook. Inside, the pain began to settle, making space for something else: agency, strength, and clarity. I have lost too much: money, time, hugs, phone calls. But what Serena cannot take is my ability to rise. Tomorrow, I will walk into that mansion not as a deceived mother, but as a woman who will claim justice for herself. That morning, Florida sunlight poured gold across the roads of Coral Gables, a neighborhood I'd only seen in pictures. Tall palms leaned over stone walkways, white mansions with red tile roofs stretched in a line, elegant to the point of cold. Andrew's car slowed as we turned onto the last street. I looked through the window and my heart sank. In front of us was the mansion where I should have lived for the past 2 years. 2 stories, white walls, Spanish tiles, a balcony draped in bright bougainvillea, a wrought iron gate opened onto a marble courtyard with a small fountain and an angel statue at the center. Every detail was perfect, like it had been cut from an architecture magazine. Andrew eased to the curb and drew a breath. "Ready, Mom?" I nodded. "I've been ready since the day she started lying." He stepped out and pulled a key. When the lock turned, the dry click sounded like an opening line to a truth that couldn't be taken back. The front door swung open. Expensive perfume and vanilla candle mingled with cool air conditioning. On the marble floor, the click of high heels rang out quick, then stopping at the top of the stairs. Serena appeared. She wore a cream silk dress, hair perfectly curled, bare feet but still carrying the regal posture of a true owner. When she saw us, her face twitched, but within a second, she had her poise back. "Andrew," she said sweetly, "you're back? I didn't expect you to bring Mom without letting me know." Andrew didn't answer. He stepped in, eyes like steel. "This is my mother's home, no notice needed," Serena pressed, her lips, shoulders lifting slightly. "This house is in your name. I'm your legal wife, so I have the right to live here. If Mom feels uncomfortable, I'm happy to give her a tour." I drew a breath, keeping my voice even. A tour? No one needs a tour of the place she should have lived in for 2 years. Her smile stalled. Andrew pulled the black notebook from his pocket. The moment she saw it, her face went pale. He set it on the stone counter, thud, a heavy sound dropping into the silence. "You recognize this?" he asked, low and slow. Serena stepped back, lips trembling. "That's my journal. You violated my privacy," Andrew answered flatly. "Not a journal. A record of wrongdoing." She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I stepped forward. "Serena, do you know the things I demand in life aren't mansions, cars, or a name to flaunt? I only want what you took, the smallest things. A birthday card, a dinner with my son, and money for card. My husband's medicine, when he was dying. That's all." Serena stood still. The fake strength on her face cracked like paint under harsh sun. Andrew looked at his wife, his eyes more disappointed than angry. "Why, Serena? Why would you do this to my mother?" She turned away, voice trembling but still playing fragile. "You don't understand. Mom never truly accepted me. She always saw me as an outsider. I just wanted a place." "By stealing?" I asked softly. "By inventing stories, dividing mother and son, then living in a home bought with love and trust." She snapped back, voice rising. "Because she was always between us. You always talked about her cooking, about how she worried about you." I was tired of living in that shadow. Andrew froze, as if slapped. "So that's it? You were jealous of my mother?" Serena panted, then shouted, "Yes! Because you love her more than you love me." The room seemed to shatter under that line. I stood still. Every secret, every move, every scheme now gathered under one bare reason: petty, selfish jealousy. Andrew stepped back, his eyes hollow. "You destroyed your marriage over that?" Serena clutched her chest, tears falling, but I recognized them not as remorse, but as the fear of losing power. I touched the cold stone counter, letting the chill steady me, reminding myself to keep breathing, keep calm, keep the evidence. "Andrew," I said slowly, "let her speak it all. Let her own words indict her." He nodded, staring at Serena. "You took the money, faked messages, kept me from my mother. What else do you have to say?" Serena wiped her tears, her voice fraying. "You think it's easy being your wife? You're always busy, always talking about work, and when you're not, it's about your mother. I just wanted to be loved." I sighed. "Serena, love doesn't mean taking. You didn't want love, you wanted control." She turned on me, eyes full of resentment. "What do you know about marriage? Have you ever had to fight for someone's love?" I smiled lightly, though the scar inside me had long since closed. "No, because I never had to fight for it. I only had to be worthy of it." Serena bit her lip, shoulders trembling. She looked around the white walls, the crystal chandelier, the polished stone floor, as if everything was turning its back on her. Andrew stepped forward, his voice cold and final. "Serena, you need to leave the house now. This is no longer your place." She widened her eyes, trying to regain her old hauteur. "You don't have the right to throw me out. I'm your legal wife, and this house is in your name. If I want, I can stay as long as I please." "Right," Andrew replied, "but not after you're sued for financial fraud and identity forgery." That sentence made Serena turn pale. She looked at me, as if seeking a little pity, but I only met her gaze with calm eyes. "Serena," I said slowly, "when you took this house, you thought you'd won. But there are things you can't take: the truth, a mother and son's bond, and trust. Those things, no matter how many signatures you forge, can't be faked." She turned away, gripping the stair railing, her voice almost a scream. "You think you're better than me? Fine, but this isn't over. I won't let you take everything from me." Andrew answered shortly, his voice like steel. "No, Serena. You're the one who took everything, and now you're only losing what never belonged to you." She looked at him one last time, her eyes filled with both hatred and despair. Then, without another word, Serena turned and walked up the stairs. The echo of her heels rang through the empty house, slow and heavy, like bells tolling for a crumbling illusion. Andrew sighed and dropped into a chair. I went to my son and set my hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Andrew. Sometimes to get peace back you have to dare, to let everything collapse." He nodded slightly, his eyes still fixed on the staircase. "Mom, I don't understand how I ever loved someone who could be that cold." I looked at him and said softly, "Because you have a heart that trusts. Don't let her take that from you." Outside, the late afternoon sun cut through the window, pouring a warm strip of light across the marble floor. I stood still, taking in the house my house, and knew that, from today on, I was no longer the deceived one. Even if Serena swore, "This isn't over," I understood with the truth exposed, this was the beginning of the end for her. After the confrontation in Coral Gables, Serena vanished from our sight as if she'd never existed. She didn't pack, didn't leave, she simply barricaded herself in the mansion, locking doors, pulling curtains, ignoring calls. Andrew tried calling dozens of times. Each time, the cold sound of voicemail played, a wall between the truth and cowardice. 3 days passed. The lights still burned at night, but no one went in or out. Andrew contacted the attorney, and I returned to the old 4B apartment, keeping myself busy so I wouldn't be swallowed by emotion. On the fourth morning, just as I finished brewing coffee, the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated a few seconds, then picked up. "Mrs. Cole?" A middle-aged woman's voice. A bit husky. Slightly urgent. "I'm Rosa Alvarez. I work for a few families in Coral Gables, and I think you should know this." I tensed slightly. "What is it, Miss Rosa?" She drew a long breath. "It's about Mrs. Serena." At that name, my hand tightened around the receiver. "Go on." "Mrs. Serena," Rosa continued, "has lived in our neighborhood for nearly 2 years. Everyone thinks she's a widow. She told people her husband, a businessman named Andrew, died of late-stage cancer. She said the mansion was an inheritance. He left her before he passed." I froze, my heart twisting. "You're saying she told them her husband was dead?" "Yes, she accepted condolence flowers, held a memorial, even put a framed photo of a man on the mantel, said he was her late husband. I remember clearly, she wore a black dress with a shawl, accepting sympathy while smiling softly, saying, 'Time will help me move on.'" I shot to my feet. My lips trembled. "My God," Rosa continued, her voice tinged with outrage. "And that's not all. 2 weeks ago, she hired me to get the house ready for a party. I heard her boast that she was preparing to leave the U.S. for Europe to start a new life. She said, 'I need to escape these painful memories.' I actually felt sorry for her then. I leaned against the table, breathing deep like someone hit by a wave. 'Rosa, are you sure? Do you have proof?' 'I do,' Rosa answered immediately. 'I have photos from the party. She even hung a fake wedding photo. The man isn't Andrew. It looks like someone pulled from a magazine. And the worst part, she's listing the mansion for sale.' I was stunned. 'Listing it?' 'Yes,' Rosa said firmly. 'She told some neighbors she wanted a quick sale because the house brings back too many memories. I heard the names of 2 families who already made offers, even sent written proposals. Mrs. Serena said she'd close soon and move to Europe to open a small fashion boutique. I slumped into a chair. My hands shook, clutching the receiver like it was a thin lifeline between reality and a bad dream. She hadn't just lied to my family, she'd deceived an entire community, casting herself as the lead in a perfectly staged tragedy. Rosa's voice softened with sympathy. "I know you're Mr. Andrew's mother. Everyone here liked Mrs. Serena, so I thought you should know the truth. I didn't want anyone else to be fooled." I choked up. "Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for calling." I hung up and sat for a long time. Images flashed one after another, Serena standing before a mirror, acting the widow, taking condolence flowers, listing a house that wasn't hers. I had never seen such calculated deceit. That afternoon, Andrew came by. I told him everything. He listened, his face darkening by the minute. When I mentioned Serena listing the mansion, Andrew clenched his fist and ground out each word. "She's crossed the line." I nodded, my voice hoarse. "Andrew, do you see? She didn't just deceive me, she deceived the entire neighborhood. She built a world where you were dead." Andrew was silent for a long time. I saw his shoulders tremble. Then he spoke, choked but resolute. "Mom, it's time to make it public." I looked at him, waiting. "I'm going to tell everyone the truth. Family, neighbors, the people who believed her," he said. "I'll change the locks on the mansion, as the rightful owner. And I want you there, to tell your part. She's hidden, manipulated, and lied for 2 years. Now she'll hear the truth not within 4 walls, but in front of everyone." I drew a deep breath. "Do you think people will believe it?" He looked at me, eyes steady. "The truth doesn't need belief to exist, Mom. It only needs to be spoken." In him, I saw Michael calm, principled, never backing down in the face of injustice. That evening, we planned the details. Andrew called the attorney to confirm legal ownership of the mansion, then scheduled a lock change for the next morning. He emailed all the relatives and a few close neighbors in Coral Gables, inviting them to a family gathering over the weekend. "I intend to turn it into a public unveiling of the truth," he said. "The more open it is, the harder it is for her to slither away." I nodded, then opened my notebook and wrote a few lines, not long, just the essentials I needed to say. I didn't come for revenge. I came to reclaim dignity for myself, for my husband, and for the mother-son bond that was nearly destroyed. I added a few lines. "No theatrics, just the truth. Keep calm, keep eye contact." Andrew smiled at me. "You're preparing like someone about to take the stand." I answered, quiet but firm. "Every truth needs witnesses, son. And this time, I won't let anyone rewrite my story." The room fell into silence, broken only by the ticking clock. I felt like I was standing on the threshold between past and present on one side, the long years of deception. On the other, the glare of light, harsh and stinging. Andrew sat across from me, taking my hand. "Mom, when this is over, I want you to move in with me. Not out of pity, but because I want it." I squeezed his hand lightly. "I'll think about it, but right now, we have work to do." When Andrew left, I looked out the window. The sunset reddened the whole sky, reflecting off the old buildings. Part of me felt tired, another part felt a strange vitality returning. I knew what lay ahead wouldn't be easy. Serena would react, maybe scheme, maybe play the victim. But this time I had the truth, the evidence, witnesses, and Rosa Alvarez, a woman brave enough to call me simply because she felt justice should be served. I told myself, sometimes the truth doesn't come from the ones we love, but from strangers brave enough to say what's right. That night, I rewrote my short speech for the upcoming gathering. No flowery words, no blame, just the final line I wanted everyone to hear. When a woman is stripped of her voice, she doesn't disappear. She waits for the day to speak again, with her whole heart and with evidence. I set down my pen and closed my eyes. The fear was gone. I simply saw clearly this was the moment I took my life back. On Saturday evening, Coral Gables glowed under golden lights streaming through the tall palms. The air was mild, but inside me rose a feeling both eager and tight. The front yard of the mansion, once a symbol of deceit, was now filled with people. Andrew's relatives, a few close colleagues, neighbors from around the block, and Rosa Alvarez were all there. Everyone stood quietly, eyes fixed on what was about to happen. The porch lights came on. Andrew stood in the middle of the yard, holding a thick folder. I stood beside him in a simple, dark dress. In front of us, Serena appeared, dragging 2 suitcases, her face taut but still trying to project poise. She wore a white dress, perhaps to look innocent, but her stiff face and heavy makeup couldn't hide her restless eyes. "Are you trying to turn this into a farce?" Andrew's voice was low but carried clearly. "I invited you here to talk, not to put on another performance." Serena set down the suitcases, crossed her arms, and tried to keep her tone even. "What do you want?" "I just want to leave quietly." "No need to blow this up in front of everyone." Andrew shook his head. "No, Serena, these people have the right to know. Because for 2 years, you lied to them." Murmurs spread. I heard whispers. "What's going on?" "That's Andrew's wife," she said. "Her husband died of cancer, didn't she?" Andrew opened the folder and pulled out a few pages, speaking clearly and methodically, like a carefully prepared indictment. "Serena Cole, my legal wife, told people I died of cancer. She accepted condolence flowers, held a memorial, and listed this mansion as inherited property. Here is the title: this house is in my name. She has no right to sell, transfer, or occupy it unilaterally." The buzz rippled like a wave. A few jaws dropped. Mrs. Martinez, a kindly older neighbor, stepped forward, her face stunned. "Good Lord, Serena, I brought you food to comfort you." "You said your husband died of cancer. I cried with you." Serena flinched, her shoulders trembling, but forced a crooked smile. Everyone misunderstood. I was joking." Andrew cut in, icy. "No one. Jokes by accepting funeral flowers and hanging a dead man's photo. Serena." The air thickened. I could hear the wind threading through the palms, dry and cool. Andrew turned to me and nodded. "Mom, your turn." I stepped forward. The yard went silent. I looked around, faces both familiar and new, people who had believed Serena was a grieving widow. I spoke slowly but firmly. "I am Brenda Cole, Andrew's mother. For 4 years, I lived alone in a small apartment in Davie. I didn't receive a single card, phone call, or check-in from my son because Serena blocked them all." A few people sighed. I continued. "When my husband Michael was dying, I couldn't afford his medication. I sold my wedding ring. Meanwhile, Serena took the money. Andrew sent me. Lied that I didn't want to see anyone. That I was difficult, that I had lost my mind." I paused to steady my breath, then looked straight at Serena. "You said I needed privacy. In truth, you wanted me to succumb. Disappear so no one could verify your words." The crowd murmured. I saw phones rise, lights flickering as people recorded, but I didn't care. Serena suddenly screamed, "You're humiliating me." "This is a family matter, not a trial." Andrew answered, calm but unyielding, "The truth doesn't humiliate anyone except the liar." The line cut like a blade. Serena's face went chalky, her eyes darting, searching for a sympathetic gaze in the crowd. But no one looked at her with pity anymore. Andrew raised the folder again. "Here are the bank statements from the last 3 years. Each month, $2,000 was sent to my mother through Serena's account. She kept all of it. A total of $36,000. And here are printed emails where Serena impersonated my mother to confirm receipt." Everything has been forwarded to our attorney. Sighs, murmurs, then silence. Some people shook their heads. Others looked at Serena with a mix of anger and pity. I turned to Andrew, resting my hand on his arm. My son isn't perfect. He believed the wrong person, but he's brave enough to admit it and strong enough to make it right. Andrew looked at me, eyes glassy, then pulled out a bright silver key ring. He turned back to the crowd, his voice clear. These are the keys to this house. They should have been my mother's 2 years ago. Today, I'm giving them back, not just the keys to a mansion, but to the trust I unintentionally lost. He placed the keys in my hand. When the metal touched my skin, my hand trembled not from fear, but from warmth, something I'd lost through years of forced isolation. Serena sneered, bitter. Fine. You win. But remember this, Andrew. I'm still your legal wife. You can't just kick me out of your life that easily. Andrew sighed, his voice steady but colder than ever. No one's kicking you out, Serena. You left on your own the day you chose lies over real love. Serena clenched, the suitcase handles, her eyes blazing. You'll regret this. I answered softly but clear. No, Serena. Regret belongs to those who won't face the truth. She spun around, dragging the suitcase across the tiles, and strode to the gate. The clatter of wheels over the steps echoed into the night like the ending of an old chapter. No one stopped her. Only the wind moved, carrying the whispers of those watching. Andrew stood still for a while, then turned to me. Mom, I'm sorry. I smiled and squeezed the keys. You don't need to be sorry. What matters is you chose the right side. He nodded slightly, tears shining under the porch lights. Around us, a few neighbors came closer, light touches on my shoulder, quiet words. You're so strong. I can't believe Serena did that. You deserve to live here. I thanked each of them, then looked around the yard. This place had once been a stage for lies, and tonight it was a courtroom of conscience. No judge, no jury, only the truth, standing tall, burning bright in the Florida night. As people drifted away, Andrew came over and said softly, I want you to move in tomorrow. This house needs a good person living in it. I nodded, my eyes stinging. Tomorrow I'll come home. I looked up at the sky. The stars were scattered thick, simple, honest light. In my hand, the keys were still warm. Not because of the metal, but because of the mother-son bond buried for years under misunderstanding, now lit again by the truth. And I understood. Every lie eventually has its day in public, like tonight. The first night I stayed at the Coral Gables mansion, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but because the quiet was so unfamiliar it unsettled me. I lay in the large bedroom, high ceiling, white curtains, a comforter scented with lavender. Everything was perfect to the point of foreign. Only the faint murmur of the fountain outside drifted in, steady like a heart finding its rhythm. After a long illness, I tossed and turned, thinking of the years' lost days, isolated in the 4B apartment, living on neighbors' kindness, believing my son was too busy to call. Now I lay in the home that should have been mine long ago, but I had to weather a storm to step into it. Sleep came late and fitful, like a shy guest knocking and leaving before dawn. In the morning, sunlight poured through the big window, laying across the polished floor. I got up and threw open the windows. Birds sang as the smell of fresh coffee filled the wide kitchen. It had been a long time since I'd heard the sound of peace. In the first days, I walked loops around the house, relearning how to use a space. I ran my hand along the granite counters, opened the cupboards, and organized each plate. The kitchen was so large, I needed 3 laps to remember where everything went. The reading room next door had shelves up to the ceiling, and the porch looked out over blazing roses. Every afternoon, I sat there where Serena had hosted flaunting tea parties to read, listened to the wind through the trees, and let my heart settle. Andrew visited me 3 times a week. At first, he was awkward, always trying to make up for it in every way, bringing food, fixing the dishwasher even when it wasn't broken, buying flowers, even gifting a pricey espresso machine. I understood that was his way of atonement, but I only smiled. "You don't have to buy me anything," I said. "What I need is your time." After a few weeks, the awkwardness faded. We found our natural family rhythm again, the very thing Serena had tried to steal. Every Sunday, Andrew came for lunch. I cooked the dishes my husband loved: empanadas, paella, and sometimes that old-fashioned stew. Andrew said, "Smells like childhood coming back." The once cold kitchen filled with laughter. Andrew chopped onions while talking about work. I tasted the sauce and scolded him playfully. "My son still doesn't know how to cut onions?" He laughed, warm as the years before lies ever crept in. After each meal, I washed dishes while Andrew sat on the porch, listening to the radio or reading the news. That simple scene was worth more to me than any property. Time passed, and the house began to breathe like a real home. I put in fresh flowers each week, rehung Michael's photo in the living room, and set an old armchair by the window. At night, I lit orange-scented candles and put on soft jazz. Everything in the house began to breathe, and so did I. One day, while trimming roses in the garden, Rosa Alvarez, the woman who had called me, stopped by. She brought a tray of flan and a bag of mint seeds. "I thought you might like to plant these," she said. I smiled and accepted, my heart full of gratitude. If she hadn't called that day, I might still be lost in the dark. We became friends. Rosa taught me how to prune. I taught her to make empanadas. Soon after, I signed up for a gardening class at the Coral Gables Community Center. Every Tuesday morning, I carried my basket there, with women my age or older, sharing about plants, soil, and pieces of our lives. I planted roses, herbs, and vegetables, things I thought I no longer had the strength to start again. Strangely, with my hands in the dirt, my heart grew calm. Maybe healing begins when you dare to touch life with your own hands. In the 3rd month, I hosted a small book club at home. 4 women came, each hurt in her own way. One estranged from her son, one left penniless after divorce, one thrown out by her daughter-in-law. We didn't cry much. We read, drank tea, and shared a little at a time. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. One late afternoon, I saw myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman there. My face no longer carried such heaviness. My brow was less tense. The corners of my mouth softened. The wary look was gone from my eyes, replaced by quiet. I smiled not to hide pain, but as someone who had survived a storm. Andrew still came regularly, but something felt different. He started talking about a woman named Danielle Moore, a nurse at a clinic he funded. As he spoke, I saw a light in his eyes, the light of a man opening his heart after being hurt. One Sunday afternoon, Andrew brought Danielle over. I remember it was drizzling, the smell of damp earth blending with fresh coffee. Danielle stepped inside with a bouquet of white daisies. She smiled, gentle. "I've heard so much about you from Andrew. Today, I'd like to be sous chef, not a guest." I smiled back, taking in her neatly tied brown hair, bright eyes, and simple warmth. Unlike Serena, Danielle didn't try to impress. She was natural, polite, and most of all, she knew how to listen. When I spoke, she set her phone down, looked me in the eye, and nodded lightly. It felt like, for the first time in years, a young person truly heard me. That meal was joyful. Danielle rolled empanada dough with her sleeves up, laughing when flour smudged her cheek. Andrew teased her. She pretended to pout, and they both burst out laughing. That laughter filled the house, the kind of sound I thought would never return. When Danielle left, she took the gardening gloves I'd given her and promised to bring a few small potted plants next time. I stood on the porch watching them go, seeing Andrew hold her hand, his eyes gentle and trusting. For the first time, I didn't feel anxious about my son loving someone new. I felt grateful. That night, I sat down with the notebook I'd kept since my husband passed. I wrote, "Healing doesn't come from forgetting, but from looking straight at the truth and letting time do its work. Community is medicine. When we dare to share our stories, pain stops being a burden and becomes a bridge." I set the pen down and closed the notebook. Outside, the fountain kept running, the water falling steady like the heartbeat of the pen. House and my new heartbeat too. I understood that the past 6 months weren't just a journey to reclaim a house, but a journey to reclaim myself. The woman once labeled senile, difficult, old and weak, now had a voice, a home, her son's love, and a small community around her. I looked up at Michael's photo on the wall and whispered, "Everything's okay now, dear. I'm truly home." And in that moment, I knew I had come back to life. 6 months after that outdoor trial, my life and Andrew's slowly settled. But one chapter wasn't closed yet, the chapter called Justice. One April morning, while I was tending rosemary on the porch, Andrew walked into the yard holding a thick file. His face was calm, but there was a heaviness in his eyes. "The attorney wants to see you this afternoon," he said. "There are a few things to sign and some new findings." I wiped my hands on my apron and nodded. "All right, tell me. What's still unclear?" Andrew sat and opened the file. "We've submitted all the evidence. Serena's black notebook, the emails impersonating you, the listing documents for the mansion, and the bank transfer statements. But the attorney found something else." I stayed quiet, waiting. "Serena opened 2 credit accounts in my name," Andrew said slowly. "She used my personal information, social security, office address, even an electronic signature to take out consumer credit. In total, more than $80,000. I froze. "My goodness, I didn't know," Andrew said, voice dropping. "She did it very cleverly. All the paperwork looked legitimate. When I checked my credit, it finally showed up." He opened his laptop and showed me. Authorized user, Serena Cole, was right there. Along with the spending history, jewelry, travel, a VIP spa membership, even a beauty course in Paris. Looking at those cold numbers, I felt both hurt and tired. Serena had gone far beyond any limit, not just lying about love, but abusing the law and our finances. That afternoon, we went to the attorney's office. Thomas Bennett, a silver-haired man with a steady voice, stood to greet us and invited us to sit. "Mrs. Cole, Andrew," he said, "I've reviewed everything. The bank confirms identity fraud occurred. However, since Andrew signed a marriage record, part of the assets is still considered marital property. Serena will be liable unless she can prove lawful consent." He slid another packet toward us. "Serena's counsel just sent a divorce settlement proposal. She's willing to accept full wrongdoing in exchange for not being criminally prosecuted. If Andrew signs, it stays in civil court and won't go to criminal court." I looked at my son. He didn't speak, just stared at the wooden table, fingers interlaced. "What do you think?" I asked softly. He looked up, eyes sunken. "I don't want to see her in prison, Mom. I just want a clean break for everything to end." I nodded slightly. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't because they deserve it, but because we need peace." The attorney smiled, eyes kind. "I believe that's a sound choice. Her social and financial consequences are already substantial." It was true. After the public reveal at the mansion, Serena's reputation collapsed. Her family, once well-to-do in Palm Beach, cut ties. They quietly sold the condo she had lived in and moved away. I heard Serena rented a small studio on the outskirts of Miami, avoiding people she knew. I felt no joy. There's nothing to gloat about when someone drives herself over a cliff. I only felt a vague weight lift the guilty fog I'd carried for years, thinking I was the mother who broke a family. Justice arrived not with cheers, but with a door softly closing. A few weeks later, the divorce settlement was officially signed. Serena relinquished all property claims, including any share of the Coral Gables mansion. The court recorded, "The house would be for my lifetime use exactly as Andrew intended when he bought it." When I received the documents, I held them tightly not for their material value, but for the clarity they represented something twisted for far too long. After that, I set new rules for myself and our family. Rule 1. Financial transparency. I manage my accounts independently, keep clear records of every expense, and I taught Andrew to do the same. Never let blind love cloud your judgment, I told him. Real love isn't afraid of transparency. Rule 2. Firm boundaries. I cherish Danielle, the new woman in Andrew's life, but I also keep respectful space. Danielle understands and responds with grace. She always calls before visiting, always asks my opinion about arranging the living room, and never brings up Serena. I know that kind of tact usually comes from someone who's been hurt before. Andrew changed too. He no longer looks for perfect, but for honesty and kindness. He often tells me, "Mom, I don't need someone who makes me feel awe. I just need someone who makes me feel at ease." I smile. You've learned what took me a lifetime to understand. In the afternoons when Florida light slants through the windows, I often sit in the reading room and turn old pages. I don't strike out the memories of Serena because I don't want to forget. I keep them as a reminder. Lies can be gilded, but they always peel under the light. One evening, I sat at Michael's old wooden desk and rewrote my will. Not long, just a few pages. I wrote in the calmest voice, with no bitterness, only clarity. My estate will be distributed by the measure of one's character, not by blood. Whoever lives with honesty will inherit. No one may hold title to or use my finances without my written consent. The Coral Gables home will be used as a community space where older women can learn financial skills and share their stories. I signed and closed the folder. Relief moved through me like a cool breeze. Since then, peaceful days arrived slowly but surely. In the mornings, I tend the garden, read the paper, and sometimes call Rosa to check in. In the afternoons, my book group and I discuss new reads and how to keep a steady heart when life isn't steady. Every so often, Andrew and Danielle stop by with wine and laughter. None of us mentions Serena anymore. We don't need to. She's only a name in the past now, no rage, no grudge, just an expensive lesson about truth and trust. One late summer evening, I sat on the porch watching sunset turn the trees red. The last light glittered on the fountain, the same sound that once kept me awake, now lulling me gently. I murmured, half to Michael and half to myself, "We went through the storm and kept our dignity. That's enough." Then I smiled the smile of someone finished with the past and convinced that justice, even late, still arrives on time. On Monday morning, while I was watering roses out front, an old silver car stopped at the gate. The engine sounded rough and tired, as if it had traveled too many weary roads. I squinted in the sun, and my heart dipped when I saw who stepped out. Serena. I knew her at once, though it took a few seconds to believe my eyes. Hair once perfectly styled now hung messy, half dyed in two tones, a wrinkled blouse, worn jeans, heels with scuffed tips. No trace of the woman who used to sweep in wearing expensive perfume and a cold smile. She stood there in the Florida glare, clutching a small purse, eyes hollow and desperate. "Mrs. Brenda," her voice was hoarse like she'd cried all night. "I just want to explain and to apologize. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Water from the can trickled over the rose roots. The sound on the leaves was steady, calm, the opposite of the chaos in the woman's eyes. Finally, I spoke, light but firm. You can talk, but only for a few minutes. I don't have much time left for old stories. Serena nodded and stepped up to the fence. She didn't cross the gate. Maybe she understood that boundary wasn't just iron, but the last bit of dignity for us both. I know I have no standing, she said, eyes down. I've lost everything. Work, family, reputation. I just want you to know, I really did love Andrew. I was wrong because I was afraid of losing him. I thought if I controlled everything, I'd be loved more. I looked at her for a long moment. In that instant, I didn't see the schemer who had once wrecked my family. I saw a lost soul standing in the rubble she created. I answered softly, my voice steady as if speaking to myself. Serena, no words can return the time I lost with my son. The missed birthdays, the ceremonies I sat through alone, the nights I believed I was a burden. But I hope you learn one thing. Real love doesn't require controlling anyone, and remorse only matters when it comes with responsibility. Serena lifted her wet eyes. Do you think I still have a chance to start over? I gently shook my head, not to deny it, but to release the question. A chance isn't something others give you, Serena. It lies in how you live from today on. I stepped back and touched the gate. You should go now. I wish you peace, but there's no place for you in my life anymore. She pressed her lips together, shoulders trembling, then gave a small nod. Thank you, even though you didn't have to. She turned and walked to the car. The door thudded shut like a final period. As the silver car rolled off the stone road, I watched without anger, only with a healthy finality, the last boundary between forgiveness and repetition. I drew a deep breath. The scent of roses and mint filled the air. The weight I'd carried dissolved like morning fog. At noon, Rosa called. Mrs. Brenda. Her voice was bright. I just heard from neighbors your garden was picked as Garden of the Month. Everyone's happy you're our new neighbor. I laughed a real light laugh. Thank you, Rosa. Maybe this neighborhood needed a bit of my old-fashioned touch. No, she said, you brought back something people forgot, feeling safe. After the call, I went back to watering. In the sun, the rose petals trembled, reflecting light like hundreds of tiny crystals. I realized I no longer watered to hide from loneliness. Now I watered to nourish life, both the garden's and my own. In the afternoon, I biked around the neighborhood. It had been ages since I felt it. The wind in my hair, the smooth roll of tires over stone. A few neighbors waved. Some kids shouted, "Hi, Miss Brenda." I smiled back, and my heart felt strangely warm. That evening, I opened my notebook and wrote a few lines. No longer pages of tears and fury, just small notes of simple joy. Today, the roses bloomed round as smiles. I made the risotto, Michael. Loved It's Still Good, even for one. Andrew and Danielle promised to take me to the beach this weekend. I also tried things I'd postponed for decades, signing up for an oil painting class, a baking course at the community center, and morning walks to the nearby park. Sometimes I wondered, if Serena had never come, would I have learned to live honestly with myself like this? A question with no answer and none needed. What matters is I learned how to move on. One night, moonlight washed the garden as I sat on the porch, watching the fountains sparkle. I remembered the early days when that sound kept me awake, stirring emptiness. Now it lulls me to sleep. I murmured, as if talking to myself. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer letting the past steer you. Because forgiveness isn't a gift for someone else, it's a gift I give myself, to live lightly, calmly, and free of old shadows. As I wrote that, I closed the notebook and looked toward the window where the breeze carried the scent of jasmine. I smiled. I'm no longer the trembling woman at that funeral, nor the victim in the little 4B apartment. I am Brenda Cole, the woman who passed through loss, lies, and loneliness, and finally took charge of her own story. And if anyone asks me what justice is, I'll say, justice isn't only the sentence for the guilty. It's the moment the hurt person gets her voice back calm, clear, and without needing to shout. I stood, set down the watering can, and gently brushed a newly opened rose. That red no longer reminded me of blood or anger. It was simply the color of life, the life I reclaimed with my whole heart, with courage, and with forgiveness I don't regret. That afternoon, the Coral Gables sky looked gilded. Sunset spread over the pool like rippling old coins. Saffron from the kitchen drifted across the porch, warm and bright, calling back the memory of peaceful days long gone. I was stirring paella in the round iron pan that had been with Michael and me for more than 20 years. It was his favorite, a dish I still make on special days, as my way of saying the good things never really disappear. A car pulled up. Andrew and Danielle stepped out with 2 bottles of wine and a bouquet of lavender. "Mom, the weather's perfect today," Andrew said, the sunlight on his face making me remember the boy who used to run around the yard begging for a taste of undercooked paella. Danielle helped set the table. She laid the cloth, placed the plates, and smiled when she saw my old pan. "Is this the legendary pan Andrew told me about?" I nodded, spooning out the golden rice. "It's seen more than dinners, tears, and laughter, too. Today, it deserves only joy." We sat on the porch, late light washing the wooden table. A breeze moved through the palms, carrying jasmine and the neighbors' laughter across the street. Andrew poured the wine. "Mom, I want you to tell us more about Dad tonight." Danielle's never heard the full story. I smiled. Michael was a man of few words who always made people feel seen. He wasn't rich, but he was rich in mercy. Maybe what I'm most grateful for is that he didn't have to watch the lies that came later. He left with his honor intact. Danielle was quiet, resting her hand on Andrew's shoulder. "I believe he's proud of you both." I looked at the 2 of them, my heart full. This house, once the source of pain, was full of laughter again. The soft clink of glasses echoed in the sun-drenched yard. Over dinner, we talked about small plans. Andrew's new branch opening, Danielle's idea for a community health clinic for seniors, and me, I just wanted to plant more flowers, read a few more books, and learn to live a little slower. As the sky turned lilac, I watched the pool catch the last light and felt a quiet peace rise in me. I understood this is what people mean by healing, not loud, not declared, just a full, gentle silence after too much turmoil. I gathered my life's lessons and said softly, as if to the breeze, "Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Real love doesn't turn into tally marks. Loving your child doesn't mean subtracting yourself." Andrew nodded in silence, his eyes warm as a fire. Danielle gave my hand a gentle squeeze and smiled. I looked down at the house keys on the table, the little metal shining in the sunset. To others, they're small and ordinary. To me, they're the symbol of dignity and freedom restored. I knew I didn't need to prove anything else. I only needed to live true and let this home ring with the voices of decent people. That was enough. When dinner ended, Andrew helped me clear the table. Danielle washed dishes while I watched the sky shift from orange to violet to black. The day closed softly, no tears, just laughter woven with the wind through the palms. Tomorrow, I'll plant another bed of white roses right by the fountain, not to memorialize anyone, but to thank life for giving me a chance to begin again, even late. I lifted my eyes to the night sky and told myself, the sun sets only to promise another dawn. Thank you for listening to my story to the very end. If you've lived through days of being misunderstood, of silence standing in for understanding, I want you to know this. You still deserve respect, love, and a voice in your own home. We, who have crossed the halfway point of life, don't need to defeat anyone. We just need to reclaim our peace and our worth. Because sometimes happiness doesn't arrive with someone's apology, but with the moment we're strong enough to forgive and move on without bowing our heads. I truly want to know, where are you watching this from? Where you live? What helps you keep your dignity and your voice within your family? Share in the comments. I'll read every line, as if we were sitting together on the porch with a cup of tea, talking about life. If my story helped you see a piece of yourself, please like, subscribe, and come with me on more journeys of healing, where we learn to let go of bitterness and hold our own hearts again.